Hello there. I recently put out a video talking all about how I watched through Star Trek the original series in 2023, but that did not include the movies Star Trek 1 to 6. This is the video that does. I watched Star Treks 1 through 6 in 2023, and these are my thoughts. Now, my expectations going into this were all I'd really heard about was The Wrath of Khan, and I might have even seen the clip of Shatner yelling, Khan! I can't really do that justice because it's currently quite late at night. But yeah, basically, I didn't know what to expect. I had no idea as to how these movies would fit into the overall lore in terms of structure, and I kind of just assumed that they would be like regular Star Trek episodes but longer, and maybe with a slightly larger budget. So imagine my surprise when I boot up Star Trek 1 the motion picture and I'm greeted with what feels like the biggest budget movie out of all 6 of them. Now, don't get me wrong, the movie definitely shows its age in places, like some of the special effects, but out of all 6 movies, even over the course of a decade or however long it took to make them all, this one still feels like the most modern. Maybe not in terms of writing, but I don't know, when I was watching it, I couldn't get the idea out of my mind that, like, I'd gone through some timey-wimey thing and they had made this movie today. Again, not in terms of special effects or anything like that, but I think it was because the jump from watching the final episode of the original series and then immediately watching the motion picture, the jump in budget and technology was so big that I felt like I was able to feel the same way that audiences may have felt going to see the movie for the first time back in the day, of the leap. Whereas if I watched the movies out of order, I probably wouldn't have thought anything like that when watching this movie. In watching all of Star Trek in chronological order, one of the things I hoped to do was capture the brilliance of seeing its humble origins and how it grew. And what I didn't really realize that I was doing is that I was nurturing the ability to be swept up in these very fan service moments. That was a badly constructed sentence, but we're going with it. And I get the impression that the motion picture isn't the best received out of all of the movies for various reasons, and I can kind of guess why. It does feel a little Hollywood, if you know what I mean. But I really enjoyed it. In fact, yeah, I'm going to give a summary of my thoughts on each movie. So I guess we'll start with the one I've already halfway given my thoughts about, which is this one. So some of you pointed out in my original series video that what I was calling the TNG Klingons actually were introduced in the movies, and luckily I started watching this movie just about a few seconds after I uploaded that video, so I got to see that for myself. I was surprised and delighted to see them not in the 90s, but in the late 70s. Also, this felt like the first real exploration of the Klingons as a culture, because now they have their own language, and we got to see the inside of their starship a little bit more in detail. Language I don't believe ever cropped up in the original series, and I feel pretty confident in saying that because I literally just watched the entire damn thing and it stood out to me when I watched the movie. Now, this movie is a time skip, and what I love about time skips was prevalent here in every way. We've got the familiar made strange. We've got this entire cast of characters in a different setting. Like, Captain Kirk is now Admiral Kirk, and Spock is, off on Vulcan with long hair on some kind of Vulcan spirit quest. When McCoy is reintroduced, he's this, bearded, angry, secluded old man who doesn't want to be brought back on board. It's got a real getting the band back together feeling to it, and it's delightful. The movie does take a little bit too long to get underway in terms of plot, because they spend about 5 minutes just journeying towards the Enterprise and being like, look everyone, it's the Enterprise. But I can't fault that, because it had been 10 years since the fandom had been gifted with a new Star Trek story to the best of my knowledge. And at least the live action one. I think the animated series came later though. And I was drinking it in personally as well. I was like, this is really, really cool. But that's not the last time this movie would take its sweet ass time with a shot of a science fiction thing, because later on when they approached that anomalous thing, which I've forgotten, the probe, when they approached the probe, they'd spend ages just flying over it, and I'm like, okay, I get it. Oh my god, yeah, we had, sorry, I know, I wrote notes because I knew I would forget stuff. There was Captain Decker, and Admiral Kirk walks on board and basically replaces him, and one of the main aspects of the movie is the tension between Admiral Kirk's experience and Captain Decker's knowledge of how this newer Enterprise handles, and can Kirk get over his pride of being, I'm the captain of the Enterprise, blah, blah, blah. And Kirk has to gain some humbleness and acquiesce to Decker's knowledge, but, you know, Decker dies at the end of the movie anyway, so, I mean, fucking, you know, that was short-lived. I found the new Enterprise to be very unfamiliar, and I would say this is a theme throughout all 6 of the movies, except for 4, because the Enterprise isn't in 4, lol. I really enjoyed the Enterprise in the original series because, you know, the sets, if we're being brutally honest about it, it's not a real spaceship, everyone. The sets felt very familiar after a few episodes, and it just had like a nice feeling to it, whereas in the movies it felt like they never fully established what the inside of the Enterprise would be like. And especially in the motion picture, it's very big, very flashy, full of lots of unfamiliar crew, and it doesn't feel quite as intimate of a setting as it used to be. Spock sounds weird in this movie, and I don't know why. I thought he just sounded different compared to the original series, but no, he sounds normal again in later movies, so I don't know if anyone else picks up on that. Probably just some kind of microphone thing they were using, or maybe Leonard Nimoy had a cold during the entirety of the filming, I don't know. It didn't affect his performance at all, but it was a little distracting. So, the plot of a movie, the space probe Voyager, known throughout most of the movie as V'Ger, has melded with some advanced unknown civilizations tech and come back and is trying to the best of its ability, complete its mission, but in doing so is endangering the human race. And wait a second, this is just this is just that one episode from the original series, but movie scale now. The episode The Changeling, that's basically what this is. Like, it has so many similar things, like when Ilea, I think that was her name, when she got beamed back up as like this probe version of herself, and they were escorting her throughout the Enterprise on, like, you know, a little tour guide expedition thing. That was taken straight out of, like, replace her with just a straight up probe from The Changeling. It's literally the same thing, but just bigger scale. Anyway, Decker and Ilea definitely felt like expendable characters, and expendable they were because they did, lol. Decker and Ilea were supposed to have like a romantic past, but Decker's reaction didn't feel real. Like, when Ilea was supposed to have died, I don't recall him really being upset, like, visibly until later. I don't know, it felt like there was some kind of cutscene. It was weird. Anyway, I'm trying not to go too in-depth because we do have 6 movies to get through. But yeah, the motion picture definitely felt like it had flaws, but it also felt like a love letter to fans, and it felt like a really fun, big production, and it was great. It kind of felt like they were trying to drum up interest in a new show, but we got more movies, so that's fun. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, I'm assuming is everyone's favourite because it's the one I've heard the most about. It definitely felt like a downgrade in terms of production, but this is the same kind of level of production which would be followed throughout the rest of the movies. And while I say it feels like a downgrade, I don't mean in terms of, like, the movie's effectiveness, I just mean in terms of the budget. I think the quality of the movies overall may well have benefited from being a smaller scale production if that was indeed the case, as it looks like it was. I wrote that in terms of character feel, Kirk seemed to be aging and Spock seemed to be friendlier. Oh, I thought Chekhov was going to straight up die, and I thought it might actually be cool to have, like, some kind of like original crew member in a different situation ends up dying, like as motivation for the other crew members, but that didn't end up happening. But to speak more broadly, Wrath of Khan felt like a really high-stakes Star Trek story that pushed especially Kirk to his like emotional limits, and we saw like destruction on a scale which we'd never seen before in the original series, and it was really fun. You're gonna hear that a lot. All of them were really fun. Spoiler alert, okay, maybe not spoiler alert. Most of them were really fun. But yeah, the Enterprise gets all smashed up. Training recruits end up dying. Khan is a really good villain because he basically comes in and pushes all of Kirk's buttons. He is ruining this man's life. And because we have such a history with Kirk as a character throughout the original series and the previous movie, we are thoroughly invested in Kirk's life not being ruined. This would have been good if it was a standalone movie, but as a movie at the end, at least at the time it was made, of a long-spanning show and previous movie, it's bloody brilliant. Kirk has a son now, and Kirk's son is an interesting development, because I have some theories. But yeah, he shows up. The second I saw that blonde kid, I was like, that's Kirk's son. And you know, it makes sense. Kirk's older now. Give him a dadly role. He's never been able to settle down and have a family, and it would be fun to play on this in terms of, and what if it turned out that he had a kid? How would he feel about being a dad in space? But I don't think the audience much like this idea, because jumping ahead to Star Trek 3 real quick, that guy's dead. That guy's dead, and he's quite unceremoniously stabbed. But anyway, we'll backtrack for a second. I know people like to meme about William Shatner's acting with like the Khan shouting and everything, but I do really believe Kirk's pain in this movie, and I've already said probably everything I need to say about it, but I do really like this more emotionally charged movie. Now here's something fun. What is probably common knowledge amongst a lot of people who don't even watch Star Trek was news to me. Big capital letters in my notes app. They kill Spock? I was legitimately surprised when Spock died, for two reasons. One, I didn't expect Spock to die. Two, I didn't realise Doctor Who had ripped off the ending of Star Trek 2. Russell T. Davies, my guy. I know that sometimes things can get lodged in our subconscious, and we can, mimic them without realising. But, I've seen this scene before. Because you did it in Doctor Who with the fucking taking the radiation and the loved friends banging on the window and pleading them not to, and the pained heroic hand squealing down the glass. We've done this before, except we haven't, because this was the original version. How have I never heard this take as a Doctor Who fan either? How has this never come up before? Anyway, before we move on from Wrath of Khan, I would like to mention that I did like that it feels like a lot of these Star Trek movies, they try and have like a overarching theme, at least for Kirk, and this time it was aging. He is clearly aging at the start of a movie. He talks about feeling older, and then at the end of a movie, when Spock dies and he starts to process that grief, he realizes that love for Spock and everything that Spock meant to him kind of made him feel younger. I really botched that entire thing, relaying it, but anyone who's watched this movie knows what I'm talking about. Movie ends with Kirk looking out at the stars and saying, I feel young. And good for you, buddy. Because you don't look it. But yeah, in summary, I wrote, Wrath of Khan is a smaller scale movie that does more for the characters than the previous movie. Has a slow start, but the pacing is better overall. Tells a grounded story within its sci-fi world, and this is more along the lines of what I was expecting. Although it's still a bigger budget, obviously, than just a longer Star Trek TOS episode. But, like, this kind of structure, this kind of, I don't know, it just felt like more what I was expecting out of the Star Trek movies. And while I really enjoyed the motion pictures, big Hollywood, big screen movie feeling, it is like I watched this movie and I was like, oh yeah, this is better. this version is better. Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock. Now, don't get me wrong, I've heard the title of the movie before, but I always assumed that Spock was off somewhere else in the galaxy, doing some mysterious stuff, and the crew had to go find him. Didn't expect him to be literally dead. I also didn't expect this movie to be a direct sequel, and obviously Star Trek 4 is a direct sequel to 3 as well. I've already mentioned that this is a trilogy, and this is something that I absolutely loved, because Star Trek, the original series, was extremely episodic, extremely self-contained, and I guess I'll talk about it now. The thing I love so much about the movies in general is that they are not super self-contained, and that they actually advance the story of the characters and the universe. I can't express how much joy it brought me to see these characters just grow and change and have experiences that lasted from one story to the next. And age, I know that wasn't really something that they could avoid telling in the story, but it was really nice to see them age. Like, after watching so many hours of them looking exactly the same and never referencing past stories and having these self-contained experiences, seeing them be able to break out of that, it was so liberating, and it let the stories that were told be much more impactful as well. Obviously, back in the day, you couldn't tell an overarching story over the course of a television season because there was no such thing as, on demand. There was no such thing as box sets. So people would have to tune in every week, and if they missed an episode, then they would be lost. So that's why overarching storytelling wasn't really a thing back then, at least not for Star Trek. I'm assuming not for most shows. So the movies were a really fun way to break out of that cycle. Also, it felt like Star Trek 3 is when we started to get some really fun comedic character moments that let individuals in the crew have a moment to shine every movie. This was the case for 3 and for 4 and for 5. And I don't think for 6. We'll get to 6. But yeah, Sulu got to bowl someone over, yelling at them to not call him tiny, and Uhura had a really fun moment getting to draw a gun on this young guy who called her old and put him in a closet. Anyway, this whole movie is about the fact that I didn't mention it, but one of the major plots of Wrath of Khan, it revolved around the idea that frickin' Kirk's son and former partner had been researching on creating a Genesis thing which would terraform planets, and of course this could be used as a weapon as well, because you don't want to terraform a planet that's already got people on it. That would be bad. Anyway, turns out the Genesis thing, not very good for terraforming planets, but it was pretty good for terraforming Spock, because that guy's back. He's alive now. I haven't talked about Lieutenant Saavik yet. She was in the second movie as like this Vulcan crew member that was basically under Spock's tutelage, and now she basically has to oversee Spock growing up from an infant to a kid to a teenager and everything again. And then the one weird thing about that is they have to address the whole blood craze thing that the Vulcans have going on, and it seems like she takes care of that, and it just kind of felt a little bit weird. I'm just going to put it out there. They don't linger on it too long, and they never fully alluded to it being a sexual thing in the original series, even though that was the general idea. So it's not quite as weird as it could be, but it's still kind of weird. I'm probably going to get comments about that one. Anyway, it turns out that Kirk's son used some shady methods to obtain materials needed to create the Genesis engine or whatever, so it's probably not quite that sad that he ends up being killed. Don't worry about it, guys. You don't have to worry about it too much, but he does die to save Saavik and gets unceremoniously stabbed to death in the background. What I think they did, what I think happened, this is my theory. My theory is that audiences didn't react well to Kirk having a son, so they decided to kill him off but use that to further Kirk's emotional journey as a character. So now Kirk has a dead son. And again, it might have been some old-fashioned acting. People might have made fun of William Shatner for it. I don't know. I felt Kirk's pain. I thought it was well done. I liked it. Like, when he hears that his son is dead and he has, like, a physical reaction to it, I was really worried that they were going to underplay it. So I liked it. And he's like, "You killed my son, you Klingon bastards." And what I really like as well about the movies as a whole is this actually plays into the final movie as well. It's not just forgotten and never talked about again. It is a concrete part of Kirk's character, unlike Kirk's brother and family dying in an episode of the original series, which is legitimately forgotten about, because at the end of Star Trek 2, I forgot about this, and I'm glad I've just remembered because I was going to whinge about it. They talk about the fact that Kirk has never had to deal with a loved one, or, Spock's basically a loved one, he's basically family. He's never had to deal with someone like that in his life dying before. And I just felt like being like, guys, if you check the episode guide, okay, you'll find that in season 2 of the original series. I don't remember if it was season 2, but let's go with it. Season 2 of the original series, they visit a planet where Kirk's family have died, and it's like an emotional moment. Anyway, that literally never gets brought up, and I'm like, okay, but it's fine. It's fine. Maybe it was an episode that didn't get replayed very often back in the day. Maybe it didn't have many views when it first aired, so maybe they thought they could just, never mention it. I liked that the self-destruct sequence was the same as the one that they used in an episode, so they did remember some specific episode things, just not... Okay, we'll move on from it, but just not his brother. It's a shining example of what I mean about the fact that things happening in the movies that emotionally affect Kirk are able to have an effect going on forwards, whereas in the original series, there was no guarantee that every viewer had seen the episode with his brother dying in it, and therefore it was never brought up again. Anyway, the Enterprise is destroyed, which I was not expecting, continues to kind of show that the movies have higher stakes. And then I did find the slugfest on the dying planet between Kirk and that Klingon guy to be a little bit, classic original series cheeseball fisticuffs. I have had enough of you! I mentioned in my original series video that I thought McCoy was the least endearing character out of the entire show, but he did have a really nice moment in this movie when they do get back to Vulcan, because this entire time McCoy's been carrying Spock's soul in his brain, basically. And they mention that, hey, this could end up killing you. We can't guarantee that this is going to be a success. Are you okay with that? And McCoy has to admit in front of everyone that he really misses Spock, and that he would be willing to lay his life down for him. And, I'm not super crazy about the idea of, men can't show their feelings, blah, blah, blah. But I am kind of a sucker for a character who's like that then ends up showing their feelings after hours and hours and hours of pretending like they don't have any feelings, blah, blah, blah. It was nice. It was a nice scene. I do like that when they did get Spock back, he was like, the ship is safe. Yeah. About that. I also liked the whole conceit of this movie, which was basically similar to the idea of passion outweighing logic. Going to all this trouble to revive Spock was not the logical thing to do. And they talk in the beginning, or in a previous movie, I think? Yeah, when Spock sacrifices himself in The End of Wrath of Khan, he says that the needs of the many outweighed the needs of the one, which was him, which is why he did it. And when they revive him, Kirk says that the needs of the one outweighed the needs of the many, which is an illogical statement, but it is an emotional one, and I just thought that entire conceit was so fucking good. But yeah, I loved how Star Trek III: The Search for Spock is just such an epic portrayal of a friendship between Kirk and Spock. It's good. Certified banger. Star Trek IV: The One with the Whales. I have heard about The One with the Whales. The general impression I get, and I'm sorry if my general impressions are wrong, you have to remember, did not have much Star Trek in my life, so I'm very much pulling this from like osmosis. General impression I get is that people did not enjoy the whales. So I am about to earn the ire of the popular opinion. I liked The One with the Whales. It might be my favourite, actually. However, I am cheating a little bit, because whereas people who went to see the movie originally would have had to sit through a movie that was all about the modern day, I get to watch the movie and go, wow, this is a fun period piece about San Francisco in the 80s. I don't watch a lot of movies in general, but I don't watch a lot of old movies that are set in the modern day. So when I do see a movie that depicts a modern day time that's decades old, it is kind of a novelty for me. And if you did go and see this movie when it first came out, I'm really sorry for calling you old. Sorry. You're great. Anyway, one small detail I did note down from the start of the movie is that we got to see a black female captain, which was really nice because one of the final episodes of the original series was talking about how women weren't allowed to be captains, even in this vaunted non-prejudice utopian society that is Star Trek, and so to have a black woman as a captain was pretty cool. I was like, hey, the times are progressing. Anyway, the plot of this movie is kind of silly. A probe shows up, an alien probe, and it wants... it talks in whale song, and so the crew of the Enterprise, limping back home from the events of Star Trek 3, determine that they need a whale. But there's a problem. All the whales are dead because humans are terrible. So, we're gonna have to go back in time and kidnap some whales. And truth be told, I thought that would be a smaller part of the movie, and at least half of the movie would be dedicated to what this space probe is, why it wants to talk in whale. No, that is not the case. Very little time is dedicated to why there is a whale space probe. At the end of the movie, when we do get the whales just do their whale song, and the space probe goes, alright, you got whales. I'ma head out. Don't get me wrong. As much as I enjoyed Star Trek 4, The Long Journey Home, I do see why people didn't like this movie. It is not very Star Trek, it is not very space, and it is a lot of whale, and the plot does not make much sense. However, I enjoyed the whale plot, despite all of this. Obviously, Star Trek have done time travel before, but they've never done it on the big screen, and so there was more time dedicated to the difference between what the crew perceived to be normal and what modern times perceive to be normal, and that led to some really fun fish out of water stuff, especially with Spock. But there were large portions of this movie dedicated literally to the crew having comedic shenanigans, and it just warmed my heart. I love these characters so much at this point, and this movie, and most of the movies, are just such a love letter to the audience who also feel the same way I do. Admiral, I am receiving whale song. Put them on speakers. Okay. They're still using money. We gotta find some. If only it was that simple. I like that they use the yellow pages as a historical way to find, like, people and places. And it wasn't when this was filmed. It was just normal. But now watching this, it is once again viewed as a historical thing. Oh, time. I love that Spock fucking dives into the whale enclosure to fucking mind meld or whatever it's called with the whale to understand what it wants. Just, oh my god, this movie is a comedy, and I love it for it. Like, Star Trek 2 and 3, emotionally charged movies. Star Trek 4, fucking, it's a comedy. Just deal with it. That being said, it's not bereft of its moments. I like that Spock says that they have to go and save Chekhov because it is the human thing to do. Spock seems to be acknowledging his half-human self, whereas before he shunned it. This is a Spock who has just been through the ringer in terms of being reborn and having to be retaught a whole bunch of things. So it's nice that we get this confirmation that he still has the lessons about humanity to his heart. The doctor gave me a pill and I grew a new kidney. I like that. Okay, Whale Girl. We should talk about Whale Girl. I like Whale Girl. She's believable because she's a lonely girl living in a big city who has very much emotionally attached herself to these whales who are now going to be let into the wild to be killed. So, I don't know, she felt believable to me. Like, she's obviously very, like, eccentric because, you know, she half believes this man who says he's from the future, and then when she learns that spaceships and futuristic travel is real, she adjusts pretty damn well, and then also wants to go with them. But it would make sense as to why she would want to go with them. The main thing that doesn't make sense in this movie is why it has to be those whales. And they even bring it up. And I think they bring it up to be like, we're choosing your whales because your whales need saving and they mean something to you. But I'm like, yeah, but you didn't know that from the get-go, and it would have been so much easier to just get two random whales, especially when the entire planet Earth of the future is in danger. Anyway, they, fast-forwarding quite a lot, they solved the whole Kirk situation with the issues that arose in the previous movies, with him not obeying orders and causing a bit of a galactic incident. They say, well, he saved the Earth, so that can help against his crimes. And for the rest of the crimes, well, we'll just demote him to captain, which is what he wanted anyway. Anyway, Star Trek 4, The Wonderful Whales. I liked it. Don't at me. Star Trek 5, what the fuck happened in Star Trek 5 again? Oh, God. Star Trek 5, the one where they went to the center of the galaxy and broke through the barrier that it turns out was there for a reason, because there is a godlike entity that is very wrathful, that wants to go and launch a crusade on the galaxy. And yes, this entire thing is just a religious allegory. Allegory? I always say allegory wrong. It was a fun movie. I like the idea that Spock's half-brother is a Vulcan who doesn't act like a Vulcan, like reminding us that the whole Vulcans following logic thing is not just like inherent in their species, it is a teaching that has to be followed, and you can't have Vulcans who do not follow it. And this is what one of those looks like. Now, they seem to be doing a thing where they put Uhura and Scotty in a relationship, kind of, or they were at least alluding to the idea that they liked each other. But then this never comes up again in Star Trek VI, so I am once again assuming that this is not something that the audience liked. That being said, I feel like the crew gets more human every movie, has more comedic elements in every movie, except for the last one, and I really like that. Uhura does some, like, feather dancing to lure a bunch of people over to them. I'm just like, yeah, go off, queen. Spock Vulcan grips a horse, a blue horse. It's a whole thing. Oh, and the fucking goofy hover boots. One thing they do in this movie, which I really like, is they show that on shore leave, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy like to hang out. But I guess Kirk is a fucking adrenaline junkie or some shit, because he decides to go mountain climbing without any safety equipment, and when he inevitably falls, Spock saves him by diving after him with hover boots, and it doesn't look very realistic or very good, and it was very, very goofy. And they show up later in the movie, again, with Spock being very rigid about it for laughs, and I love this fucking franchise. We did get some McCoy lore in this movie. So Spock's brother has this power which is never really explained. I thought it was just a Vulcan thing, but then the characters acted like it was some extra thing that's not just a Vulcan thing, but he gives characters visions of the past. But the weird thing is, other people can see these visions too. But I just don't think it's very well thought out. But we see that McCoy helped his dad pass away when his dad was literally living in pain. And I'm not going to get into that entire ethical discussion, but like the torture that brings to McCoy's character, especially after hearing that there was a cure shortly after he helped his dad do this. I really appreciated that they actually fleshed out McCoy's character a little bit there. In my headcanon, I feel like that happened just before the events of Star Trek the Motion Picture, because when we do meet him in the motion picture, he is presented as this, grizzled, bearded old recluse who doesn't want anything to do with anyone, and I think it would make a lot of sense in the events of his life if that were to happen then. And then we see that the very first thing that Spock's dad says to him when he's born is about how human he is, and that's like a negative thing. It really explains a lot of Spock's kind of anti-human agenda about himself. And from what I've been able to gather via osmosis, this is something that's been explored a little bit in Strange New Worlds, but we won't be getting to that for a very long time. Kirk has a line which I really appreciate in this movie, where he says, "I don't want my pain to be taken away, I need my pain." That's some good fucking writing. I like that. Good shit. And yeah, then they find literal God. Except he's not literal God. He's one of the many godlike supernatural beings that the crew find among their travels. So yeah, this movie doesn't quite have as much connective tissue as the previous movies. It is just kind of like a fun standalone adventure, and it feels like it ends a little bit abruptly as well. There's never any exploration as to whether the crew were truly brainwashed or if they were just acting on their own beliefs after having this super therapy session with Spock's brother, and if they were acting within their own brains. Oh my god, I can't fucking form words, it's too late at night. There's no reprimanding of their actions. It's just fine. Everything's just fine, and they go camping again, and Spock learns row, row, row your boat. Don't worry about it, it's fine. Star Trek VI. The one that I came the closest to not liking. I'm gonna say it. Star Trek VI is a little bit boring. It's mostly a political thing with the Klingons, who have had a bit of an oopsie and are now probably not going to be having a good time, so they're going to have to make peace with the Federation, and Kirk is sent, quite unwisely, to help set up this peace talk. The thing I love about this movie is it draws back on Kirk's hatred of the Klingons for killing his son, and it talks a lot about prejudice and given the treatment of the Klingons in previous like episodes of the original series and depictions and stuff, it is pretty fun to then be like, okay, but look, the Klingons are more than just this gruff warrior race. You've got like they've got like a president, and they're not all super gruff. You've got different types of Klingons like that. I feel like I can see the original series version of this storyline, and it would have been downright boring and unwatchable. But yeah, they get framed for murder, and then they have to go to prison, and I hate a misunderstanding in any story. It's just annoying. The best part of this movie was Wingman Captain Sulu. Sulu's a captain now, and he's fucking boss. Hey Captain, Starfleet wants to know if we have a position on the Enterprise. No, we don't. Captain? Are you hard of hearing? No, we don't. Like, fuck yeah, Sulu. Go off, King. And then when he shows up at the end of a movie and helps the Enterprise take down the bird of prey, oh, so good. I'm so glad Sulu got to be captain of the Excelsior, and we got to see him as a captain. He's just everything I wanted for that character, man. It felt like he never got much of a limelight, and in this movie he got a lot of love. I hope there's a lot of extended universe fiction about Captain Sulu. I would be very interested to see it. Anyway, this movie set up the Klingons. I guess the Klingons are part of a federation in Next Generation. I'm gonna find that out very soon, but it feels like it was setting up some stuff for the Next Generation. Editor's note, I've just started watching Next Generation, and I've just realised that some of these movies were actually made after the beginning of the Next Generation, in terms of production order. Oops, it's fine, don't worry about it. It didn't feel like quite as big of a send-off of a movie as it could have been in terms of saying goodbye to the original crew. Like, you had all the themes about, oh yeah, we only have 3 months left as a crew, and then the ship is being, taken out of service. But I think the main thing about this particular movie is it did start to feel a bit long in the tooth, and I was definitely ready for it to be over by the end. That being said, I am going to miss the crew of the original Enterprise. I know I've got Star Trek 7 to look forward to, but that's all the way on the other side of TNG, so we're probably not going to get to that for a while. I talked fairly at length about my feelings about the original crew at the end of the last episode of the original series, but once again, I grew to love every character in the crew, man, so much, and it's gonna be weird watching the Next Generation and getting used to a different crew. Watching these movies and watching them grow as characters and watching them age has been an absolute privilege. And you know how like everything at the minute is getting like this kind of revival, this fan service revival, like Obi-Wan Kenobi is a series, and a bunch of other frickin' examples I'm too tired to think of. I feel like this was the original fan service, like, years later paying homage to a beloved franchise thing, and it was such a delight to experience in chronological order. But I think that's about going to do it for this movie before I fucking fall asleep at my microphone. I'm going to go watch episode 1 of The Next Generation now. I still don't know if I'm going to do thoughts on videos of that season by season or all at the end of the show. I'm going to watch season 1 and see how I feel. But either way, I will eventually make my thoughts on Star Trek The Next Generation. For now though, thank you for listening, and let me know what you liked most about the original series crew, and I'll see you hopefully eventually in another thing.